Hi, folks. This is Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. for the Maoist Third Worldist Collective. I wanted to comment on some recent things that have been happening in the Near East in the war by Bibi Netanyahu on Gaza. And of course, it's not only King Bibi. King Bibi may be the prime minister. He may be the figurehead. But there are a lot of political parties to the right of Bibi Netanyahu, many of whom are pressuring King Bibi to move even further to the right. So, what is happening right now? Right now, Israel is trying to push Gaza out of Gaza so that Gaza is no more. The residents of Gaza go into Egypt, maybe, go into Lebanon, which has said no, maybe, make their own boats and go into the sea, maybe. Finally, Pope Francis has spoken out against the war crimes being perpetrated by Israel, and for the first time, as far as I know, has referred to the war crimes being perpetrated by Israel as terrorism. So now we have the most well-known spiritual leader in the world, Pope Francis. The Dalai Lama may be a close second, but certainly nowhere near the level of Pope Francis, condemning Israel as a terrorist state. That, to me, is remarkable. I literally could not imagine another pope, certainly not Pope Benedict, who was his predecessor, but even Pope John Paul II, Pope John Paul I, and Pope Paul, who was the first pope that I personally remember saying anything like it. So, Pope Francis has condemned the actions of Israel as terrorism, and in so doing, again, has correctly referred to that nation, the Zionist state, as engaging in terrorism. The question is, what comes next? In the midst of Pope Francis doing that, Western nations are continuing to send weapons to Israel. And why? Israel is a wealthy first world economy. It's not like Ukraine. It doesn't need the help of NATO or of the US or of Germany or of any other country. And yet it is getting it. Not only that, but not a single leader besides Pope Francis in the West, and Pope Francis is in the West. the Vatican is in the center of Rome, has referred to the activities of Israel as state terrorism. I guess, to me, the question I would ask is, what comes next? How do the other nations in the world respond to what Pope Francis said? President Biden, who was presumably a devout Roman Catholic, who has met Pope Francis, must surely know that Pope Francis has condemned the activities of Israel in Palestine as being state terrorism. So, my question for President Biden right now is, Mr. Biden, what will you do? Will you change your policies? Will you stop providing material to Israel? Will you stop supporting Israel's genocide against Gaza, which is exactly what it is? The same kinds of activity. I'm not saying the same activity. Each historical event must be considered by itself. But the same kind of historical activity as was perpetrated by Adolf Hitler against the Jews in Germany and in other countries. That same kind of activity is now being perpetrated by Israel against the Gazans. And finally, Pope Francis has spoken out. Now, the reasons for him speaking out, you could argue, were not entirely altruistic. He made that comment right after a Roman Catholic church was attacked by the IDF, by the Israeli Defense Forces. So you could say that Pope Francis had a personal interest in accusing Israel of being a state terrorist country right now. But I'm not that cynical, especially not when it comes to Pope Francis. I'm not a Roman Catholic. I was born into a non-practicing Ashkenazi Jewish family in New York City, with an emphasis on non-practicing. I converted out of Judaism to another religion back in 1930. Nobody in my remaining family practices Judaism in any way, shape, or form. And yet I am still Ashkenazi. Whether I am still Jewish is a matter to be debated. Orthodox Jews would say yes, because once you were born the child of a Jewish mother, and I was born the child of a Jewish mother and a Jewish father, you are by definition Jewish. Reform, conservative, and Reconstructionist Jews say the opposite, that since I converted out of Judaism to another religion, I am no longer Jewish. Well, for me, that issue is inconsequential. I have never belonged to a reform, a reconstructionist, a conservative, or an orthodox temple. So their categories are irrelevant to me. What is important is that I, coming from an Ashkenazi Jewish background on both sides of my family, my father born in Brooklyn in 1919, my mother born in the Bronx in 1925, that I, born in Manhattan, growing up in the Bronx and Queens and later Long Island, coming from that same Ashkenazi Jewish background, feel it is my duty to speak out against the atrocities being committed right now as I speak by the IDF. Now, will my words have any effect? Of course not. Of course not. They will have no effect at all. I know that. I'm not delusional. I'm not a fool. I am no one's fool. I was watching a show I don't ordinarily watch. Not sure why. I just happened to be attracted to the title of the video. It was a show by the Young Turks. And ordinarily, as a communist, I don't care much for the Young Turks. They are progressives, not communists. But while watching the video, what I heard was that one of the bombs that was sent by Israel over to Gaza had Cenk's name on it. Cenk is the owner of the Young Turks. Now, he said that he didn't care about that. That didn't bother him. Didn't bother him personally, which I think is the right response. Hopefully, it would not bother me personally either. I don't know. It's doubtful that I will be in the same situation as him. I have nowhere near his notoriety, nor would I want it. But the fact that his name, a Turkish American who has spoken out against Israeli terrorism, as has the Pope, would have the name, his name, written on a bomb that was being sent to Israel, made me think of something else. Who was next? Do I think that what I'm about to say will happen? Not really. Could it? Yeah. Israel has turned into an authoritarian dictatorship. But the thought remains in the back of my mind that Pope Francis's name will eventually, maybe tomorrow even, I don't know, appear on a bomb sent by Israel, sent by the IDF to Gaza. Now, up until now, the Pope has maintained good relations with Israel and good relations with Palestine, which you would expect him to do. He's the Pope. But again, he is in the West. He is not in the Near East. He is in the center of Rome. The Vatican is an independent country. It's not a part of Italy, but it's a country entirely surrounded by Rome. And what will happen if the Pope's name appears on a bomb? What will Joe Biden do then? Will he still remain silent, much as he has remained silent about Cenk's name being placed on a bomb, much as he has largely remained silent about the killing of so many Palestinian children in Gaza? I don't know. But the fact that the Pope has spoken out so forcefully against Israeli terrorism makes me wonder whether at some time in the not too distant future, whether Biden will find the courage to finally condemn Israel for what it is. Israel is not a democracy. Israel is an authoritarian dictatorship under the direct headship of Benjamin Netanyahu, with the support of a convocation of right-wing parties, further to the right in many cases than Likud. So what will Joe Biden do? That is my question. I guess we will have to wait on that. This has been Mark by Mark A. Foster, Ph.D. Have a pleasant day and an even better day tomorrow.